Okay, welcome back to the Yay for Business podcast. I'm doing something a little bit different today. So I'm testing this out because I desperately want to start adding video into the podcast episodes. So everyone's always like, well, why don't you just record video while you're recording the audio? And the problem is that I've always been sitting at my computer looking like a mess, like not really organized, kind of moving around, like a mess behind me. And that's always made recording the podcast so much easier for me. But I knew that I really wanted to add the video element and I needed to find a really easy, streamlined way to do it. So right now, if you're watching or if you watch the video version of this episode, you can see that I've set up a little corner for myself to record these videos, and I've really set it up. I've got my little boom arm for my microphone now, which now can swing back and forth between here and at my desk, which is right next to me where I sit at my computer, because I needed, again, it to be easy. I don't need to be moving microphones around. And then I also have, not yet, I have a light that I'm going to literally attach. My idea is to attach it to the wall here so that I can actually just bring the light out sort of in front of me. Right now, I just kind of have my janky little ring light that, anyway, set up over there. But I just wanted to show you the iterative process here. I'm recording the video on my iPhone, on my travel tripod. We'll see what happens with the content here. We're going to throw it out there. Today's episode is I'm going to do a deeper dive into the psychology of why it's important to pre-allocate your time in the time puzzle method. Why, if you are feeling terrified or even just a little bit anxious about planning your time in advance, if that feels like either a waste of time, like why would I spend time doing that? What's the point? Or I've done it in the past and I don't follow it and it doesn't work. What's the point? I'm just going to be disappointed again. I'm not going to do that. I want you to hear me out here, because one of my biggest small t traumas around time management and planning was maybe 5 years ago. It was during COVID. I took a time management and productivity course by a really well-known entrepreneur. And I was like, this is the thing that's going to change everything. And I went through this course, and basically it was about take everything and break it down and put it on your calendar and then just do it. And I was like, okay, yep, that's what I'm going to do. And then I never could get it to work. It just never worked for me. And I was like, look, I guess I'm just too flawed. I guess I'm just not the person who can do this time management stuff. And I felt so, when this happened, I felt really, really let down by this. It took me a while I still, obviously my business, I didn't give up in general, but I really do think back on this. And I really was anti all this time management stuff for a long time. And then when I had kids, it's kids are just a thing that puts an incredible amount of constraint and pressure on and time being one of those resources, time, money, energy, etc. So having kids forced me into a situation where I had to be really, really, really intentional with how I use my time. And honestly, having to buy back time. Right now, my son is with his part-time nails right now. And I have to literally pay for time to have time to do anything. And so it becomes a really, really, really precious resource. And it should be for everybody. But some of us have been put in life situations where that becomes impossible to ignore. So when I had my kids, I started to have this reckoning with time. And at the time puzzle workshop, that's really what I talk about, is this reckoning of how much is on your plate and how much time you have, and you've got to make it fit. And if it doesn't, you've got to get rid of stuff. You've got that's it. It's a simple math problem. And it took me, as it does when you are a new mom, it took me a few years to figure this out. And I'm pretty obsessed with it. And it took me a few years, 4 years probably, to figure this out. And now I feel like I have this process with this time puzzle method that there's no problem that it doesn't have the solution for. The problem with the system that this other entrepreneur taught me was that it was incomplete. Yeah, it's a great idea to break things down and put them on your calendar and then just do them. What about when you don't just do? What about when you underestimate the time? What about it didn't take into account all of these variables that could come up in this process. And so My process does. My time puzzle process absolutely does. Now, I'm going to change gears here and I want to tell you a story of something that literally happened to me last night and put me down this rabbit hole. And I'm so glad I hadn't recorded this podcast episode yet, which is also relevant to the time puzzle because I had recording this podcast episode on my time puzzle for last Thursday, and then I was so tired. So coming into and this is not the side story switch that I was going to tell, but I'm going to tell this to you anyway. Coming into 2026, I came out of 2025. I don't want to say burnt out because I feel like that's such a blanket term, different types of things. I put everything out there in 2025. Like I did everything I possibly could. I worked my ass off. I really did. But because I was working so hard, what happened about halfway through the year, I realized is that I was operating out of adrenaline and cortisol and anxiety and stress. And so I was in this really like go, go, go mode. And so I had my time puzzle and I needed my time puzzle to constrain me and show me where my work had to stop. But I didn't need it to get me going because I literally couldn't stop working. Like there was no not working in 2025 for me. And then coming into the beginning of this year, last week, I mean, we're literally in the second work week of the year as I'm recording this, coming into this year, I was like, that is not happening for me anymore. Like I'm not running on adrenaline and cortisol. I've really reset my nervous system from that. And I was finding it really hard to work, not because I don't enjoy my work and I don't like what I do, but because I had no energy. My nervous system still needed some recovery. Like I needed to switch over to a new energy source. And so last week I had it on my time puzzle to record the podcast episode that I'm doing right now. And I just couldn't get it done. Like I literally laid on the couch and vegged out and I ordered McDonald's. I had mac and cheese. Like I was in, if anyone's familiar with polyvagal theory, I was in dorsal vagal shutdown. Like I was cold. I was just apathy, like flat, like no affect, nothing. Like and I knew what was happening. It wasn't scary because I knew exactly what was happening. I literally just read the book Anchored, which is all about polyvagal theory. And I was like, I'm in dorsal shutdown. Like that's so obvious to me. And so I feel so much better now. I thought it would take a few weeks. It's only been a handful of days. I feel so much better. But on Thursday, I could not get anything done. And so because I have my time puzzle method, I was able to go, okay, well, I still need to do that episode. So we're just going to move it somewhere else. And what I saw was there's no work time available that I can even make available before this podcast episode has to go out. Like it's just not there. So I call up the nanny, right? And can you come on Monday? I could use some extra time, right? But I know exactly why I'm doing that. It's not reactive action taking. It's that I have a intentional proactive calendar that's telling me exactly what I need to get done. And it doesn't matter if I get it done or not. That's the thing that people don't understand about how my process is different. Yes, everything needs to go on the calendar. You need to follow the calendar commandments so that your default there is you're not making all these executive function decisions all the time. It's just pre-decided. And we're going to talk about that in a second. This psychology of the pre-allocating and why it matters. So I had something else happen last night that I want to tell you. But that when I don't get it done, it's completely neutral to me whether I do it or not. All the calendar is telling me is that this is something that you had pre-decided needed to happen for you to hit your goals. And if you don't do it, it's probably going to affect your goals. Like that's all. Like it's not inherently bad. It's not inherently good. So I didn't get it done. And so I decided that it's still important for me to get this podcast episode done. So I'm going to hire more time with, our nanny and get the podcast episode done. So that's why I'm here right now doing this right now. Okay. So that's just a little example. Now I want to tell you what happened last night because it's completely unrelated to time, but it's completely related to this concept of pre-allocating resources and the psychology of what happens for you. That I have some notes here because I had a little chat with ChatGPT about this after, and I was like, what is going on here? Because this is fascinating. So I took my family to IKEA yesterday, literally just to have a place to take the kids to burn off some energy because, we just need to get out of the house. So we go to IKEA and I'm already planning a kitchen renovation for this year and I'd already mapped it out and I just wanted to look at some of the things I had decided and like see if I still like them. So there wasn't a really big reason to go to IKEA, but we went, we had a great time. I picked different kitchen stuff. It was great. And when we're in the kids section, I saw that they had some of those, those like hanging shelves for your closet that just have like just like Velcro, the railing. And I was like, oh my God, I need to buy these because I have been trying to create a system to pick out my kids' clothes for the week, Monday through Friday, in advance. And I hadn't found anything that was working. We just didn't have a system for that. And I needed these things. And they're like really expensive everywhere else. And at IKEA, they were $10. So I got 2 of them, one for each kid. And I got home and I quickly put them in the closet. And then I went through their clothes and I picked out their clothes for the week. And as I was walking away from putting their clothes, underwear, socks, pants, shirts, sweaters, like for the whole week, I was like, that is the best feeling. Like I kind of want to cry. That is one of the best feelings imaginable, is like, I know now that I don't have to think about that in this stressful moment in the morning when it's like, yeah, it's a small thing to pick out a pair of pants and a shirt, except that sometimes, you don't have enough pairs of pants or they don't go together or like whatever. You can't find them. Like kids stuff just goes everywhere. And that in these moments that are already, there's enough going on, like that's something I don't have to do. And that it's something that I can also teach my daughter to do. And then she can learn a skill and do that. And then like one more thing off my plate. But more importantly, I've pre-allocated what clothes are going to be worn this week for my kids. And I realized this is the exact same psychology. It's the exact same thing as the time puzzle, is I'm pre-allocating what I'm going to do with my time. Now, here's the thing. When I pre-allocate what I'm going to do with my time, I get the same sense of relief of like, oh my God, I know what I need to get done this week in order to like check off the things that I'm committed to doing, the projects that are going to get me towards my goals. And this is where I start linking things to, what I teach my clients in the 6-figure sprint, and the curriculum of Yay for Clients, which is the curriculum of the 6-figure sprint, is like, you need to know what the strategies are that you need to implement. You shouldn't just be doing random things on your calendar. Like everything on your calendar needs to be filtered out by and reverse engineered by your goals, which I talked about in the last couple of podcast episodes. But once I know what those things are, like I know my weekly podcast, I know my monthly workshops that I'm doing, like those, and then my client delivery stuff, like that's the main work on my calendar. I know what all that is. It's defined. That's the first thing, is like your work has to be defined. And that's Time Puzzle Workshop. We're going to talk about that. Your work has to be defined. We have to know exactly what the work is. It can't keep changing. That's not business. It doesn't have to be that way. But once it is, just pre-allocate it on the calendar, and then I know everything has a spot. Okay, so I want to talk to you about the psychology and the benefits of the pre-allocating, and then I want to get to what I know is going through your mind right now, which is, yeah, but I'm not going to follow it. I don't trust myself to follow it. What if it doesn't go according to plan? It's not going to go according to plan. And like I already alluded to, it doesn't matter. I'm going to talk to you about that, but I want to talk to you about the psychology of this pre-allocating first, okay? So allocated resources, there's psychology that says that allocated resources feel more abundant than non-allocated resources. And I do the same thing with my money. Another great topic for this is I use the software You Need a Budget for both my business and personal life. Pre-allocate my money. So my money comes in. You need a budget. Will be like, you have $5,000 to assign, and then I will assign every dollar a job. And so now that money is allocated, and that money feels more abundant, even though it's the same $5,000, than if there's just $5,000 that there's an unknown of how it's going to get used. It feels nervy. Like I don't know where that money's going to go. I know where my money is going to go. So I get to just sit and chill, right? I know what outfits my kids are going to wear. So I can sit and chill. I know what my work schedule looks like, so I can sit and chill. And so it actually feels more abundant in that way. The clarity is more important than the actual abundance. It's more important for the sense of abundance than the actual quantity of the time or the, clothes or the money or whatever, right? And so I think that's like the most important thing is like the allocating makes the thing feel better. Now, here's a couple other things that I wanted to bring up is that what we're doing, I'm going to talk about a main concept here, is the difference between constraints and defaults. I think so many of you listening to this, if you scheduling everything on your calendar for your work week. You hear constraint. You hear, I'm losing my autonomy and my spontaneity. That's what I would have heard even 2 years ago, right? It's like, that's like, but what if I don't want to do that? And what I need you to understand is that's not the point. Like, you're going to get to do whatever you want to do. The point is that not that we're constraining you, not that you're being forced to do something, not that you're losing free will, not that it's irrevocable and unchangeable, but that you are deciding what the default is if you don't want to make another decision later. So I wrote this down in a couple of different ways. I want to see what lands with you. You already have a default. Whatever you're gonna do is the default, but you're relying on your executive function, which for most of us, that's being taxed. It's already weak and it's getting overtaxed. You're relying too much on your executive function to make reactive decisions and choices in the moment of execution instead of pre-allocating, pre-deciding what the default is. You can always change it in the moment, but by default, if I don't change anything, all resources are allocated and taken care of. Let me use the example of the clothes. One day, I'm sure I've picked a pair of pants and a shirt and a sweater, and my daughter's going to decide she wants to wear a dress. That's fine. That's fine. She's now used the executive function to go, I want a dress instead. Great, let's do the dress. But I don't have to, in that moment, go, what is she going to wear today? Right? So it's like giving you something to respond to react to change versus having everything open as your default, which is a shitty box to live in, and having to constantly use your executive function to make those. You might decide to change it all the time, but that's no different than if you hadn't. You just know what things you're like going to have to fit in later because you know what was pre-allocated. You know what was supposed to be on the calendar. I know that, if you change it, that was for Wednesday, so that Wednesday has to get filled, right? If I didn't do my podcast, I know that I have to move it somewhere else. With my money, it's the same thing. I'm not going to follow my spending plan exactly, but I know if I spend more on clothes, then that's just going to come from somewhere else. And I have peace of mind because I have clarity on where that's coming from. So this is going to help you to build self-trust, because if your past self is taking care of your future self, then you start to have this more cohesive sense of self that, like, I trust the decisions that past me made. I trust that I forget it's Monday. I forget what I do for a living every Monday. I have to remember. But I trust past me last week, because she was on it, that even though she was super tired, that she made the decisions for moving the podcast to this time for a reason. So I'm just doing it. I didn't need to get up to morning. I didn't need to wake up this morning going, what am I going to do with my time today? I knew today I've got to record that podcast episode. Like, that is so much peace of mind and so much groundedness and certainty. And so by doing that, we're offloading our executive function and we're maintaining our executive function for making the decisions that we want to make. I want to now move this into this reframe, because so many of us, myself included, this is huge for me. We think that we rebel against structure, and we don't rebel against structure. We rebel against what we perceive is our lack of freedom, our choices being taken away from us. If you look at your calendar and you think your calendar is telling you what to do, and if you don't do it, you're bad, then you're going to be like, screw you, calendar, I'm going to do something else, whatever, right? You're not rebelling against the structure. You're rebelling against the perception that you have lost your autonomy and your freedom to make the choice. I want you to start using your calendar as a representation of your time resource. It's just, here's a visual representation of the concept of time that you're going to have as long as you're alive, right? You're going to have, and here's how it's going to go down. And you can pre-decide how you want to organize that. But then in the moment, if you want to change things, you can, but you're not requiring yourself by default to constantly decide in the moment what you're going to do. That's the difference. That's the nuance. Okay. So you're not rebelling against structure. You're rebelling against the you're rebelling against the concept of the irreversibility of it. Spontaneity requires structure. You can't be spontaneous if you have no idea what you have to get done, if you have no predictability. I want you to be spontaneous when you want to be, which could be 90% of the time, I don't care, but not have to be. I want you to be spontaneous when you want to be, not because you have to be. Forced spontaneity is not spontaneity. It's overtaxation of your executive function of having to make decisions all day. It's decision fatigue. Real spontaneity is in any given moment, I get to make the choice. And if I want to go, you know what? I'm not going to record my podcast episode. Instead, I'm going to lay on the couch and watch all of the episodes of We Crashed on Apple TV, then that's what I'm going to do. And that is what I did on Thursday. And I'm going to order McDonald's and I'm going to have a great time. And that was spontaneity. But I knew I could do that because I knew what was going to happen with my work after that I was going to have to reallocate that. And I didn't know when it was going to happen. I didn't figure out right then. I just know, okay, I'm going to have to reallocate that. I'll figure that out. That's it. It can be really as simple as that. Okay, let me turn the page in my notes so I can make sure that I'm hitting everything here. Okay, we are trying to reduce making decisions when we're tired, stressed, overtaxed, because those are going to be worse decisions. That's not spontaneity. That's just frustrating, reactive decisions. I know that a lot of work that's on my plate, I'm not going to feel like doing when I have to do. The majority of work I have to do, I am not going to feel like doing. I didn't feel like recording this podcast. So I needed to make the decision that I needed to record this podcast episode, not today. I didn't wake up today going, what do I feel like doing today? And then plan accordingly. I asked myself what I felt like doing today. And then I also looked at, okay, what have I pre-decided needs to get done? And I went, yeah, okay, that's what we're going to do because I don't want to face the consequences of not getting this podcast episode done. And I had enough resources, energy, time, etc., mental, physical, right, to get it done. And so I'm getting it done and I feel great. And I'm going to feel so good for having gotten it done versus being like, what do I feel like doing today? And just making everything based on that. We want to make our decisions from a high capacity state, right? Which is in advance, not a low capacity state, which is in the moment. We want to make our decisions from our CEO self in advance, not our implementer self in the moment. That's not the person who should be making the decision. Okay. And I want to reiterate the difference between constraint and default. I'm not telling you to constrain yourself and then just follow it. Oh my God. That gives me anxiety instantly. I'm not telling you that what's on your calendar is what must happen. I'm telling you that that's what's going to happen by default if you don't make a different choice. And that in any given moment, you get to make a different choice and move. That's what the time puzzle is all about. And that's why it's called, because it's just a bunch of blocks, a bunch of pieces that you get to move around and organize however they fit to make the picture that you are trying to make. Pre-deciding where your time goes, it doesn't lock you in. It gives you a better default in place to start than if you were starting from scratch. That is the difference, all right? I hope that psychologically you can just profoundly see now how this is so different from any other this isn't productivity and getting things done, right? This is about how you think about your calendar and how you think about your time and how I'm putting you back in charge of those decisions. And I'm not gonna shame you for not following through. That's not the point. The point is that in any moment you get to adjust that calendar. Now that begs the question, what happens when you say, I put on my calendar, I'm going to do it at this time, and I don't. Like I said, totally neutral. I couldn't care less whether you do it or not. You just have to decide, does that thing still need to happen? What prevented me from getting it done? Is it anything that I need to tweak? Is it a lack of clarity? Is it something that I actually can do? I actually need to do something to make this easier to get done. Do I need to break it down more? Does it need to get done? Does it need to take up as much time as you had allocated? And if it does still need to get done and it needs to take up that much time or however much time, then just move it on your calendar. Okay. And if you're chronically avoiding something, then we get to go into the deeper psychology of, okay, what is internally preventing me from doing that task? And this is the work that I do with my 6-figure sprint clients. This is often work you absolutely can and should try to do for yourself. It's often very hard to do because there's a lot of blind spots at play there. So if I'm chronically avoiding doing my taxes, for example, I need to sit and go, okay, what is it that is preventing me from doing my task? What is it? But I have to come from a place of neutrality, because if I'm not coming from neutrality, if I'm coming from shame, then I can't get curious and I won't be able to find the nuance there. And that happened to me last year. I actually was carrying a lot of shame because I had not filed my taxes until the end of the year, and then it didn't take me very long. But once I was able to get to a point of, okay, what is going on here for me? Not from shame, not I'm lazy, not I'm stupid, not I'm bad at this, not I hate this, none of that. We got to get to that emotional neutrality. So I sat with it. What is it? Well, it feels overwhelming. I feel like I don't even know where to start because there's too many moving parts. When someone like do your taxes, I'm not even sure what I need to do. So I'm like, well, I guess that's the starting point. So I just blocked off time to be like, okay, right now I'm going to figure out what I even need to. And then I had a list, and then I was able to implement that. And it took me like an hour tops to do all of that. And it was so easy. And I can't believe how easy it was. I actually am like, I always have paid accountants and they're like, why am I doing that? This is so much easier. So that is what we do when we're avoiding a task. I could go a lot deeper on that. I could do a whole podcast episode on that. If that's something you want to hear more about, let me know. But this is the work I do inside of the 6-figure sprint. The time puzzle, if you want to build your time puzzle and find out how do I make my time puzzle that's got those defaults decided, that I know all my work fits in, I know what work I need to do, how long it's going to take, and I can just wake up every day knowing exactly what's on my plate for that day specifically. Not some general idea like marketing Wednesdays or whatever, but like it specifically today I need to do my podcast and this is my process for that. Like if you want to know how to do that, then you need to grab my time puzzle workshop. If you want help implementing that, facing like when you're not doing it and like tweaking it and making sure that it's working for you, that is where I would work with me inside of the 6-figure sprint. I will say the time puzzle is one of the number one topics that I talk to my clients about. And I think it's the topic that people have the most kind of shame around because they feel like, I'm a 30, 40 or what have you person and I should know how to manage my calendar at this point. And I'm like, no. The way I'm teaching you to do this is fundamental. I know it looks similar on the outside. It's fundamentally different than anything you've done before, and it's going to solve all your problems. It takes time for the brain to shift into that. That is when I really want to work with you in the 6-figure sprint. It's also where we're going to plug in the specific strategies that you're going to implement to build your 6-figure service-based business in the next 12 months. So if you want to work with me to doing all that work, come apply to work with me in the 6-figure sprint at CourtneyShull.com/apply. Otherwise, I will see you and chat with you in the next episode.